She didn't care about how Richard ran his household because at the end of the day, she can't really tell nobody how to raise their kids. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Alright y'all, I don't really got too much to say before I start this video because my nails are still busted, so y'all not gonna see those. I haven't done my nails in like 2 weeks because well, at first I was really just trying to wait for the other ones to fall off because usually once one fall off, I start popping off all the rest of them. But I didn't want to do that last time. I kind of wanted to let them like leave me at their own free will. And two, yeah, I think I was really just feeling lazy at the moment. But yeah, so that's the story on why I haven't showed y'all my nails or why I haven't done my nails. I don't even know if y'all really like me showing y'all my nails. Do y'all like me showing y'all my nails? Because I like showing y'all my nails. Anyways, that was a rant about nails for no reason. So I'm gonna just go ahead and get into this case. And y'all, I'm really surprised that I haven't seen any other true crime people do this, because usually I'll look on YouTube to see if anybody else has done it. And most of the times I still do the case even if a lot of people have already done it, because 9 times out of 10 it's a case that I've wanted to cover myself. But I just be liking to see if anybody else did it. And I did not see anyone else do this case. And I'm very surprised by that because, well, it's crazy. So we just gonna go ahead and hop right into the story. So it's the mid-80s and Michael and Florence Phillips are living in Indiana with their youngest son, Michael Jr., who they call Mikey. Now the Phillipses do have other children, but all of those children are grown at this point, and Mikey is the only one who still resides in the house with these two. Now, like I said, they live in Indiana, but Florence is originally from Maine, from Machiasport, Maine, and she always wanted to go back to Maine because wherever it was that they lived was not the safest place, and she wanted a better environment, a more safe place for Mikey to grow up. And Florence's last straw would come when one day somebody was actually killed outside of their house. And so that was it for Florence. She said, I don't care what we have to do, but we have to get out of Indiana and we going back to Maine. And Michael, being the loving husband that he was, he didn't have no problems with this. He was like, okay, cool. He was probably feeling the same way that Florence felt after that person died in front of their house, or got killed rather, in front of their house. And he was probably like, yeah, let's do this. Let's figure something out. And so in 1987, the Phillipses moved to Machiasport, Maine, where life is slower, is more of a country feel, and it's pretty much everything that Florence ever wanted for Mikey growing up. So they move into this beautiful house that overlooks the water. They have like a beach as their backyard, literally. It's such a beautiful place. And as they settle into their life in Maine, Florence is getting to know her relatives that she never really got a chance to meet while she was in Indiana. I mean, obviously she knew of her family members, but she never really got a chance to get to know her sister's daughter Vanessa, her husband Colby. So Florence is getting reacquainted with family. Her family's getting reacquainted with her, meeting Michael and Mikey. They're meeting all of her family that she's been talking about over the years. And outside of the family, they even making friends with the neighbors, more specifically their neighbor who lived across the street, but not a house that was directly across the street. It was across the street but diagonal to the Phillips' house. And this family that they met was a family of 4. There was the mom, Anita, who was a stay-at-home mom. The dad, Richard, was a retired Navy veteran who now worked as a part-time postal clerk. And they had 2 sons named Jerry and Ricky. And Jerry and Ricky were around the same age as Mikey. So Jerry, Ricky, and Mikey, they all became really, really close. The kids pretty much essentially became best friends. But there was one thing about the Uffelmans. I don't even think I told y'all their last name yet, but their last name was the Uffelmans. So there was one thing that the Phillipses did not too much care for about the Uffelmans, and that was the fact that they were gun enthusiasts. Like I said, Richard was an ex-Navy man, and he ran his household pretty militant style. He was a very strict, no nonsense type of person, and that's the way he ran his household. He pretty much ran his household with an iron fist, and he taught his kids about guns, gun safety. He let them shoot. They would target practice, and this was just the one thing that Florence did not care for. She didn't care about how Richard ran his household because at the end of the day, she can't really tell nobody how to raise their kids. But one thing she did want to make sure was that whenever they was over there playing with them guns, or not playing with the guns, but you know, target practicing and learning how to shoot, that Mikey was nowhere near, even though this is very common in Maine. A lot of people in that area like to hunt They taught their kids about guns, gun safety, how to shoot, target practiced in their yards and stuff like that, but not for Florence and her family. It was a no-go for her. Anyways, like I said, even though the families got along and the families appeared to be super, super close, they were kind of exact opposites in the way that they raised their children. Not to say that Florence and Michael let Mikey run rampant, but they just did not rule their house with an iron fist. They pretty much kind of like had the fun house. Their house was the house in the family that everybody went to when it was time for family gatherings. Like, they hosted the dinner parties, they hosted the barbecues, they was having, you know, just people over just because. Florence's niece Vanessa said that in her eyes, Florence and Michael was the cool auntie and uncle. They liked the same kind of music she liked. They were jokesters. They liked to have fun. They just ran the type of house where everybody was invited. It was very welcoming, very not lackadaisical, but like just almost kind of free in a way. So as y'all can see, like I said, they were complete opposites in the way that they ran their household. But even though they had these opposing parental styles and they ran their houses completely differently, everything was good between the two families until one day when the Phillips's daughter Sandy was visiting from Indiana. Like I told y'all, they have older kids, and one of their daughters, Sandy, came to visit them for about a week. And I don't know about y'all, but I know me and my husband, we like to have barbecues, especially when we got people coming in from out of town. And the Phillips were no different. While their daughter Sandy was in town, they had a family barbecue. The whole family just came together to enjoy the fact that Sandy was in town, to get to know her, to talk to her, to just engage, party, have fun, drink, laugh, eat. Y'all know what a family get together is like. It's just a bunch of fun. It's a bunch of laughter. It's a bunch of like crazy goofiness. I mean, at least that's how my family barbecues be. So that's pretty much what's going on at the Phillips household. And then the party starts to die down. And as the party dying down, Richard come out of his house and he noticed that there's a broken beer bottle. It's either in his driveway or in front of his house. And he's pretty pissed about this. But instead of going across the street to talk to his friend to ask him to either clean up the bottle, ask his family members to clean up the bottle, and to just not be throwing bottles in his yard, Richard decided to call the police. He called the cops because there was a broken beer bottle in his yard. Right. So he calls the cops show up, and they're like, okay, what do you want us to do about this? This is a broken bottle, clean it up or have them clean it up. I don't really know what to tell you. I'm pretty sure the cops didn't say that, but that's probably what they was thinking, because that's what I was thinking, like, why did you call them? But in any event, the officers do their due diligence and they go over to talk to the Phillips, and the Phillips said they don't know what he's talking about, and they probably don't. They probably wasn't even thinking about Richard while they was having their family barbecue. So the police tell Richard that they can't do nothing about the broken bottle, but Richard is not going to take that for an answer. He let them go, but it's not over for him. So over the course of the next few months, whenever Richard would find either a broken bottle, a soda can, beer bottle, any type of drink that was in his yard or near his house, he would pick it up and he would put it in a plastic bag and collect it. And instead of turning it into the recycling center, Richard would call the police and tell them that, look, these are all the bottles that the Phillipses are throwing in my yard. And the police are like, what do you want us to do about this? We literally have no proof that they're the ones throwing this stuff near your house. And again, the police will always go and talk to the Phillipses, but they will always deny that they were doing this. Now, me personally, I wouldn't put it past the Phillips family to be just being petty and throwing stuff in their yard just because they called the cops. Like, you want to call the cops over one little bottle? Here, let me give you something to call the cops over, for real. But that was never proven, and the Phillips always denied it. That was just me saying I wouldn't put it past them. You know, it was never documented that they was really doing it. But anyways, Richard would call the troops multiple times, and not only would he call the troops while they was on duty, he would actually call this troop's home number to tell him that there was more bottles that was being thrown in his yard. Like, what level? Like, don't call. First of all, I know this is the 1980s, but couldn't you call AT&T or Bell South to let them know to block his number? Because do not call me at my house to tell me that your neighbors is throwing bottles in your yard. Like, what? Anyways, as y'all can imagine, things started to escalate. And it escalated to the point where one day Mikey called over to the Uffelman's house to talk to Jerry and Ricky, and their mom Anita answered the phone. And you know, Mikey being respectful, hey Miss Anita, or however he addressed her, can I speak to Ricky and Jerry, or Ricky or Jerry, or however he asked? And Anita said, okay, honey, well, let me talk to your mom first. So Mikey gave the phone to Florence, and Anita told Florence that, look, I can't have Mikey calling my house no more because Richard said that he don't want the boys hanging out with Mikey no more. And with that, they got off the phone. And Florence had to tell her son, like, okay, I'm sorry, Mikey, but you're not allowed to play with Jerry and Ricky no more. And the Phillipses really thought that it wasn't that serious, but whatever. And they kept on living their lives and doing the things that they had been doing, having family over, having get-togethers, just living life as normal. But Richard was determined to make that as hard as possible for them. So remember Florence's niece Vanessa. I told y'all that she thought that her aunt and uncle were just cool peoples. And so she will often go over there just because, like, just to be chilling and hanging out. So her and her husband will be helping them with, like, you know, just regular tasks, or they would just be outside helping them in the garden or helping mow the lawn, just doing regular outside stuff. And Vanessa said that Richard would be outside with a bullhorn just yelling insults at the Phillips family. Like, he would say stuff like, you don't belong here, go back to the city, one day you're gonna get what you deserve or get what's coming to you. And they would just really be in the yard like, are you serious, sir? And they would just kind of try to ignore it and finish doing what they was doing and head back in the house. But even while they were in the house, Richard was still be doing stuff to antagonize them. So Mikey's room was at the front of the house and it faced the Uffelman's house. And Richard would shine a big old bright light beam. I don't even know, but it was like a huge big light beam that he would just shine into Mikey's room. And Mikey, being a kid, was naturally afraid. Richard was legit trying to run them out of town. Like, he did not want them there no more. And he was gonna do whatever it took to get them to leave. And one day Michael ended up having to call the police because he felt like Richard was trying to intimidate him and his family, because Richard and his sons was outside and they was shooting their guns. Now, like I said, this was something that was normal in Machiasport. So when the police were called and they started talking to Michael, Michael told them what was happening, and they pretty much felt like Michael was overreacting because ultimately the Uffelmans weren't doing anything illegal. It was just nothing out of the ordinary. And so they felt like Michael and the Phillips family was just blowing it out of proportion. But even though Michael knew that this was something that was normal, it was something that was different about this particular time. He pretty much felt like Richard was out there trying to flex his muscles, trying to say like, look, I'm big man on campus, you can't fuck with me, and you gonna leave even if I have to make you leave type deal. Unfortunately, the police couldn't do anything to help Michael, but the officers did give Michael a useful piece of information. They pretty much told him that if he wanted them to be able to do anything, that he would have to have some type of evidence. So after this encounter with the police, Vanessa and Colby remembered that they had a camcorder at their house that they wasn't using. And they gave it to Michael so that he could use. And this is just a regular camcorder, like a home video recorder with a stand that you can set up and record home videos. It's not like a security camera. It's not a home security system where it's just set up on your house and it's recording 24/7. No, this is just a regular home video camcorder that you have to physically set up every single day. You have to change the tapes, and it's just a very manual type of situation. And Michael was committed. He so badly wanted to catch Richard. He faithfully set up this camcorder every single day without fail, facing towards the Uffelman's house. Now, to be sure that he captured Richard in a moment of harassment, Michael would start doing little stuff that he knew would irritate Richard. He never did nothing illegal, but he just did little stuff to antagonize Richard so that he could potentially provoke him to come out of his house and like threaten him with a gun, or maybe not threaten him with a gun, but you know, just harass him so that he would have some type of evidence to show the police so that he could get this harassment to stop. And so, like I said, he would antagonize and antagonize and antagonize. And because of these little irritants that Michael was doing towards Richard, Richard became paranoid and he started feeling like Michael was a threat to him. He started feeling like Michael was a threat to him and his family, and he started to fear that Michael would actually harm them. And so he ended up taking a protective order out on the Phillips family. And because of Richard's antics and everything that he was doing, Michael, who had never been a gun type of person before, he had ended up purchasing his own gun just to protect himself and his family. So both of these men were essentially in protect my family mode. Well, Richard actually seemed to be more in combat mode than protect my family, because it's the summertime, right? And Richard would have his 10 and 12-year-old up at the ass crack of dawn running military drills in their front yard. And when I say running military drills, I mean the whole nine. He had army fatigue, rifles in hand, 1, 2, left, right, march type shit. It's like he was getting ready for battle. But even though it seemed like Richard was out here getting him and his boys ready for war, Michael was not about to back down. He was not about to hoe up to Richard. He was not about to let Richard run him out of his home. And Michael decided to fight back, but legally though. And he went down to the courthouse and he filed a harassment suit against Richard. And so now with all the back and forth going on, Florence was getting nervous. She's a mom. She's already not here for the guns. These people is outside, you know, marching with guns in their front yard. And she, like I said, she was getting more and more nervous. And she told Michael that he was no longer allowed to go and play outside by himself, because she didn't know what the Uffelmans was capable of. She didn't know what the hell they would do. And that mother's intuition, baby, I tell you, it never fails. Because one day, Mikey was on his way to the beach. Because like I said, they literally live pretty much on the beach. And so it was nothing to just walk down to the beach. And so Mikey was walking down to the beach one day when Richard, this grown ass man, started chasing Mikey with a gun. And so Mikey naturally hauled ass and started screaming as he ran all the way home. Now, Florence could hear Mikey screaming, and she had already knew what was up. She had already called the police before Mikey even hit the doorsteps. So the police come, they make a report, but once again, there's no evidence of this. And so they legally can't do nothing but take the report. And it was after this incident that Michael decided that he was going to file his own protection order against the Uffelman family. Because up until this point, it had only been a harassment suit that he filed. But he said, no. This has gone way too far. I actually have to file a protection order against this family. So it's now July of 1989, and Michael and Florence, they decide that they need a break from this madness, and they decide to go back to Indiana to visit their daughter Sandy. And while they're there, of course, they enjoying their time and, you know, catching up with family that still live there, and, you know, pretty much just all the stuff you do when you go back home to visit. But they was also still concerned about the Uffelmans. So Michael had actually ended up bringing some of the cassette tapes that he had previously recorded to Indiana with him. And he was showing Sandy these cassette tapes. And she said that she could see that her parents were visibly afraid of this guy. And Florence was even so scared that she took Sandy to the side, and she said that she had a really bad feeling that once they got back to Maine, Richard was gonna kill them. And she asked Sandy, like, look, if Richard for whatever reason killed me and your dad, but he don't kill Mikey, please just promise me that you will take care of Mikey. And Sandy, of course, agreed to this, but at the same time, she like, don't talk like that, don't even say stuff like that, but yes, I'll take care of Mikey if something happened to y'all, right? And so the Phillipses would leave the very next day to head back to Maine. And as they driving back up to their house, Mikey could see somebody run from their porch back across the street to the Uffelman's house. And once they actually got out of the car and made it to their front porch, they could smell the strong smell of kerosene. So once again, the police are called. And Michael tells them that he's pretty sure that Richard is behind this. But unfortunately, they have been gone away to Indiana for this period of time. So Michael wasn't setting up this camcorder that he had been setting up every single day to catch Richard in this act. So there was literally no proof that this was Richard. And once again, the troopers could do nothing about it. But Michael knew that he needed to keep recording in order to catch all of the harassment that Richard was doing to him and his family. So once again, he set up the camcorder and faced it towards the Uffelman's house. Now, he already had some tapes, but he was literally going to get every single instance on camera so that he could have a solid case when they went to court for his harassment suit against Richard. So this back and forth will continue for the next month, where Richard and Michael would call the troops would come out, but there was nothing that they could do. But they were unfortunately caught in a back and forth of he said, she said. So it was really no winning for either of them at this point. But things would reach a boiling point in August of 1989 before they even had a chance to go to court. So it's the 29th of August, 1989. And Vanessa and Colby go over to Florence and Michael's house to tell them that they had just found out that Vanessa is expecting her and Colby's first child. So they eating, talking, and celebrating, just getting excited about the fact that they're about to have a new member to the family. And, pretty much just being giddy over the fact that there's about to be a new family member. When Florence and Michael decided that they was going to go on their evening walk. Now, this is a walk that they took pretty much every evening. And Mikey actually asked could he go on this walk with them, but Florence told him, not this time, Mikey, you just stay here with Colby and Vanessa and we'll be right back. So Michael and Florence headed out on their walk, and due to the nature of everything that had been going on, Michael stayed strapped just in case, and they also stayed on their side of the street just in case. And so they headed out on their walk as per usual, staying on their side of the street. But unfortunately, as soon as they passed the Uffelman's house, a barrage of bullets would come from the Uffelman household. Michael and Florence never even had a chance to react. Richard and his sons, who were 10 and 12 years old at the time, fired multiple gunshots at Florence and Michael Phillips. Now, upon hearing these gunshots inside of the Phillips Now, upon hearing these gunshots back inside the Phillips household, Colby, Vanessa, and Michael ran to the farthest room of the house, away from the gunfire. But Colby grabbed a gun that was in the house and he started loading it just in case Richard or anyone else decided to come in the house to kill them as well. But luckily, nobody entered the Phillips household. However, Richard did leave his house to walk across the street to where Michael and Florence were laying to fire one more shot before he turned around and walked back into his house. And once the gunfire stopped, Vanessa and Colby took that as a chance to escape from the Phillips household. So they grabbed Michael, ran to Colby's van, and drove to Florence's sister's house, Connie, who was Vanessa's mother. And back at the crime scene, Richard had already called the police and told them that he was under attack. And so the police get there promptly and they go to Richard's house because he's the one who made the call and he's the one who said that he was under attack. Now, when they go to Richard's house, they really don't know what to expect, but they do make entry and they find Richard at his kitchen table, just pretty much patiently waiting for them. But on the kitchen table is an array of firearms and ammunition. And as the troopers are in here with Richard, there's other troopers outside canvassing the area, and they end up finding Michael and Florence somewhat in a bush. It kind of looked like they tried to escape the gunfire and hide, and unfortunately neither one of them survived this ambush. And so they ended up arresting Richard for the murders of Florence and Michael Phillips. And so now naturally the police have to search the Uffelman home, and what they found in this home, oh my goodness. So they not only had the arsenal of weapons that was laid out on the kitchen table, they found even more firearms in this house. They found homemade explosives. They also found that this home had a bunch of tripwires. Y'all, it took the bomb squad 3 days to clear out everything that Richard had in this house. But even after those 3 days and all those tripwires were taken down and all of the firearms were taken out and all of the explosives were no longer going to explode and taken out, they found that Richard had been digging holes, y'all. He had secret passageways, tunnels that he had essentially dug from his home, from inside of his home to the outside of his home. It was literally wild. So, like I said, Richard was arrested and charged with the murders. And at first he tried to claim self-defense. But not only was there no evidence to support this at the crime scene, but also the camcorder that Michael had been setting up every day, it was recording. So in this video, you can see Michael and Florence walk past their house. And as they're and they're still on their side of the street. They never left their side of the street. So they walk past their house. And as soon as they get out of view of the camera, you can hear and actually see the gunpowder shoot from the Uffelman home in the direction of Michael and Florence. And there was a couple of seconds in between the first shot and then the multitude of shots that followed, and I counted at least 15 shots. Now, the police said that there were upwards of 25, but I heard 15 in rapid succession. Now, there could have been multiple gunshots going off at once, but like I said, there were a multitude of gunshots that followed the first one. And then once those shots stopped, you can see Richard Uffelman run from his home in the direction of Michael and Florence, and then you hear one final shot. It was so hard to watch that and to see that, knowing what was happening, even though you couldn't necessarily see them being shot, just knowing that that's what was happening, and then the way in which it was happening, it was very hard to watch. So upon this evidence being put out there, Richard pretty much ditched the whole self-defense claim and then pleaded not guilty due to reason of insanity. But his insanity plea was rejected by the judge, and he did end up going to trial. And he was ultimately sentenced to 50 years for the murder of Michael, and then life in prison for the murder of Florence. But at his sentencing, he maintained that he was just a man who was protecting his family and that they was plotting against him through video games or something like that. And I don't know if that was like a real thing that he thought, or if he was just trying to play up this insanity thing. I don't know. But I also don't know what happened to his sons, because they were indeed shooters as well, but it's never been reported, or I never found a report as to what happened to them, if anything. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were never charged, because they were essentially either brainwashed by their dad or just following instructions from their dad. I wholeheartedly believe that they are not just cold-blooded killers and that their dad had them brainwashed to protect their family. And Mikey was indeed taken in by Sandy. She kept her promise to her mom, and she did end up raising Mikey. And throughout the years, Richard tried to appeal his case. They were all denied, and he ended up dying in prison in 2021, but that's all we know. It was never really reported as to how he died, but he did die in prison. So now y'all let me know what y'all think, because I don't completely not believe the insanity thing. Like, I feel like mental health and insanity did play a part in what happened, right? Like, I don't doubt that mental health played a part in everything that happened, but I don't think that it was solely because he was insane. I feel like a big part of this came from the fact that Richard was used to being the intimidator. He was used to being the person who everybody pretty much did what he wanted them to do because he was able to intimidate them into doing so. But Michael was not going to back down to him, and he could not take that. And that potentially messed up his psyche a little bit. It's like, how dare you? I've never had nobody challenge me like this. And so he didn't know how to process that or how to handle it, besides thinking that Michael was a threat to him, when in all actuality, Michael was really just a man trying to protect his family, you know? But yeah, y'all, that is all I have for this case. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. So yeah, we just gonna go ahead and hop right into the case. But lately, Florence had been wanting to move back to Maine because Louisiana, she didn't live in Louisiana. And this family that they became, yeah, my refrigerator be making noises that I'm not I'm not feeling. So Jerry, Ricky, and Mikey, I feel like I just like named New Edition. Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike, like close enough. And the Phillips were no different. While their daughter Sandy was here, child, she wasn't here. That he had essentially dug. The Phillips felt like no, don't stutter. You're stuttering. You're stuttering.